My next guest doesn't need an introduction, so I want to tell you the story of how this happened. In January, 2 of my friends sent me this article, which said Stephen Bartlett was making millions from his podcasts. And since that day, I've listened to a podcast, sometimes 2, every single day. Fast forward 3 months, and my auntie Rashma, who lives in New York, asks me if she should go onto his podcast in LA. I had changed my flights 3 times, but it just so happened that these specific dates aligned with mine. So as I flew to LA, I realized that not only do I get to watch one of the greatest podcasts live, but I also had the opportunity to ask Stephen to record a podcast with me too. Not only did he say yes to recording a podcast with me, but he let me use his set, his crew, and his equipment to record this episode. The kindest, most generous man. I can't believe I'm saying this, but please welcome Stephen Bartlett to A Millennial Mind. So Stephen, welcome to Millennial Mind.
Thanks for having me.
This feels very surreal to be in your studio and to be interviewing you.
Well, you've got one of the real attributes of successful people, which is just sometimes you've got to ask a question. And my personal story is riddled with moments where I asked a question from someone that was pivotal to my life and my success and my trajectory. But most people probably didn't even know that you can just ask questions. Absolutely. And as we finished recording with, your auntie,
yes,
you said, you asked a question as I was walking out of the kitchen. You said, could I have a conversation with you? And there's something really important in that, I think, for young people, which is like that in that situation, the consequence of me saying no is nothing. You remain exactly where you are in the world. But the potential upside of saying yes, right? Maybe you might have to deal with some rejection if I'd said no,
yes,
which is an ego thing, whatever. But the upside of someone saying yes in those moments can be pivotal, as it has been for me. So,
absolutely. And there was no downside for me here today. I came to your podcast. It's a crazy story. 2 months ago, and actually 3 months ago now, 2 people sent me an article by you. And it says Stephen Bartlett made, I think it was 1.7 million from his podcast this year. Is that correct? I think so.
4.
Something like that. Was it 4.5? Okay, well, maybe I should have memorized that stat before this.
The podcast directly, yeah. But the Diary of a CEO brand, it's like, yeah.
So they sent me that and they said you. And in that moment, I thought, oh God, I'm so upset. Like, I don't make any money from my podcast. But then I thought, I have something to learn from this guy. So ever since that day, I listened to your podcast every day. And then I saw that you put on your story, I'm coming to LA, who should I interview? And I didn't even think to ask Rashma because she lives in New York. 2 days later, she messages me saying, are you going to be in LA? I have the Stephen Bartlett podcast. And I said, are you joking? I've moved my LA flights 3 times. And this is the exact same date that you're going to be there. This means something. And you're everything that I want to be in terms of the podcast, in terms of your businesses. It just feels like it was meant to be. So yes, there was no downside of me not getting this interview, but there was significant upside. Now, your whole book, and I believe one of your strongest messages, is about really being authentically yourself. And your journey that you've talked about is everyone should, and Jim Carrey says this also, I wish everyone was rich and famous. They could see that this is really not what it's about. But what I find really difficult is you had to buy a Ferrari and you had to buy your big house in London. And only then you could say, guys, don't pursue this. I feel all the people who are sending this message have the same thing. But yet the younger generation see all these things as a point of success and we still pursue them. Do you think we all have to actually get to that point where we can buy these things for us to actually reject the fact that we don't need them? Because I think we already know we don't need them.
Well, it depends. There's two forces at play. One of them is the insecurity or the social pressure that's driving you to have the Lamborghini. How strong is that out of 1 in 10, right? And then there's the other counterforce, which was the narrative of Stephen Bartlett telling you once he's had it that it's not going to make you fulfilled. How strong is that out of 1 in 10? And a really simple way to view it is like, which force is stronger? Right. If the force of insecurity, trauma, my upbringing where we didn't have anything, we were the black poor family in a middle class white area, only black kid in my school, house smashed to pieces, 6-foot grass out the front, everyone out, all my neighbors, I think I've shown some of my team this, all of my neighbors had perfect houses and perfect, like 1 centimeter grass, and you grow up in when you attribute value by context.
Right.
So like you can get the old Nokia I used to think it was a great phone, but in a world of iPhones, it becomes a piece of shit. I felt like a piece of shit. It was a very strong force in my life. Shame, trying to fit in. Why am I black? Why is my hair curly? Relaxing my hair, stealing stuff, like all of these things. The force was so strong in me that no words from a bit millionaire that a Lamborghini isn't going to do it were going to counteract the strength of that force. So I had to have it fail me. I had to go and buy a mansion, and I was there for months before I begged to leave.
Yeah.
Because it did a bunch of really it compromised some of the Maslowian needs that we all have. One of them was, it was an hour away from my friends.
Yeah.
So I lost my sense of community. It took 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours of a commute to get there and back. And it did nothing for me. It was trying to fill a void that couldn't be filled with possessions. I needed to realize that I was always enough. So that's really the answer, is like, how strong is the force? And honestly, if your insecurity, your trauma, whatever it is, the driving force that's making you want Lamborghinis and material shiny things is stronger than the way that you're delivered another truth about the fact it's not going to fulfill you, then you're going to have to get there and let it fail you. That is just the truth. Like, and for me, it was so strong. So I had to be failed by it to learn that it wasn't going to be my thing in life.
And I think it's because we think of things as, it's convention, right? So conventionally, having a Lamborghini and a big house is going to define you to be successful. Yep. And I love the way that last week you uploaded a video and you said, me and my girlfriend, when we go on holiday, we have separate rooms. We need our own personal space. Now, I love the way you challenge these things and give people a different perspective, because somebody who is in a relationship and is going through that same level of, I think I need my own space, will feel, actually, I'm not a weirdo. I don't not love my boyfriend or husband. But actually, what's also difficult is, in a world where there's so many opinions and now there's so many different viewpoints, how do you know what's really right for you? So let's say I'm someone who's really unhappy in a relationship, and I know that I don't want to spend time with that person. And a lot of this is about understanding who you are, and your love languages, is presence one of them. But somebody who's listening to you and thinks, well, you know, it's normal to sleep separately, or it's normal to spend so much time apart. So maybe I do love this person. How do they navigate through actually what's right for them?
I think we all have a really clear indicator in our lives, probably the most pure, powerful indicator about the decisions we should be making. And I sit here with guests all the time, and it's so obvious that they had that indicator going off in their lives, and they probably ignored it because of their parents or because of society or because of a status quo. And that indicator is, how do you feel?
Yes. Your gut.
Your auntie talked to me about it a second ago. She said when she went into the working world and she was having a certain job, she was miserable and depressed.
Yes.
Right? But she persisted because pressure from her parents, pressure from society, whatever it might be. In relationships, ask yourself, how do you feel?
Yes.
It seems like such a simple thing, but we always, for some bizarre reason, seem to consider it to be less important how we're feeling than how it looks.
Right.
I think how it looks to the outside world or to my parents. How does it look seems to be a more dominant question than how do I feel? And like following the satellite navigation of how do I feel in our lives is not easy, right? No. Because it sometimes means leaving a relationship. It means difficult conversations. It means adjustments, and it means criticism. It means shedding a friendship group. It means leaving a university course. It means leaving a city. But whenever you zoom out, hindsight tends to tell you that, in fact, that was the most important indicator that life gave you, and you ignored it.
Right.
Because of something else. So even now in my life, like when I'm trying to make decisions, the key thing that I make my decisions through the prism, the first question has to be like, how does this feel?
Right.
And if I listen to that, I end up with better outcomes. But it's sometimes in the short term, people are upset. And that is okay, because in the long term, at the end of the day, I'm the only guardian of my peace and my happiness. I'm the first guardian. I'm the gatekeeper of that. So my first priority has to be, like they say with that kind of cliched plane analogy, I have to put the mask on first.
Right.
Or else everyone is going to be really pissed off, because as you've seen, I mean, I don't mean to be morbid or graphic, but the thing killing most men is themselves under the age of 45 in our country. Mental health is, ailments are soaring, anxiety, depression, all these things. So I think it's never been more important to like really prioritize that question, which is, how do you feel? You make your decision. Like, and this is really has been the driving question of like all the things that people now respect me for. like all the things where people go, oh my God, he's so amazing or whatever. Oh, he's so courageous. Really started with me being able to say, I fucking hate university. I hate school.
Right.
I hate this job. I hate this call center. I hate this company I founded now.
Yes.
I'm going. Where are you going? Don't know, but not here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that, so brave. No, we talked about this off camera. Like, in fact, it's probably cowardice because I'm not a risk taker. I'm not going to risk the most important thing of all, which is my chance at happiness in this one life that I get. People don't do that. It's so weird, you know? I guess we're just incapable of zooming out. And I think we also think we're going to live forever.
Absolutely. And I also think spending time in solitude helps. So I went traveling alone. And when you're traveling alone, you have a lot of time alone. It's without all the noise, without all the pressures, without looking at your phone all day because there's no Wi-Fi. And, you talk about social media as a status war zone. Right? And how we just said, the algorithm supports that. So I know if I post a picture of myself in a bikini, I'm going to get 20,000 more likes than if I post a picture of me with a mic recording my podcast. It happens all the time. I've had amazing guests on my podcast, post them, not that many likes, post a picture of my bikini, everyone loves it. Now, what was really hard for me actually is I used to model a few years ago and I still do a little bit. But it wasn't within my heart. It wasn't something that I felt like I feel great doing this. I was doing it because society said it's great to be a model, it's for my own validation. And what I really noticed actually during that period is I was deeply unhappy. And what I started to do is say, I'm not going to post any more photos of that anymore. And I'm going to do things that make me feel really happy. Now, what we were speaking about before is we've grown up with a generation of instant gratification. So it's really difficult to stay in your lane and push through the things that you really want to do because we're very impatient. And you talk about this in your book, right? Patience is key. And it's very hard for me sometimes when I'm doing my podcast to not see it grow as quickly as, let's say, you. I'm not comparing us. But see other people who have podcasts and think, should I then switch my lane? Should I upload more pictures of me in a cool dress? Or should I upload more pictures of me modeling? Because I know that that's what people are going to like. And I think a lot of people in our generation feel like this. We mold ourselves to what we want to be seen as and what we think is cool or popular. And we move away from actually what Reshma talked about is our dharma, what's in our heart. What's your advice on that? And how do you think you're actually not doing that?
So my thesis on patience as well is that I'm incredibly impatient in the short term. Everybody, there's my team members that stood, only meters away from me, and they will say, yes, he's incredibly impatient in the short term, but I'm incredibly patient in the long term. And I think as it relates to what you've described there with your podcast and not, it's not growing as fast enough, whatever, it doesn't really matter over the long term, as long as it's something that you love doing every day. And that's maybe a bit cliche or whatever, but what is the rush? If you genuinely people tend to have a long-term patience problem when the thing they're doing sucks. I get this all the time. Young kids come to me, they say, I started this hair business because thought it was an opportunity to make some money. I'm a year and a half in and I've not made £1 million yet and I'm going to quit, right? If you think about how long have you been doing your podcast?
2 years.
Okay, I've been doing mine 4. Mine only grew, no one was listening for the first 3.
Okay.
Which it gives you some context because I did it for another year from where you are now and still no one was listening.
I remember I saw your graph. It was like this and then it shot up.
Yeah, it's like the Burj Khalifa. Honestly, it's like a vertical line upwards from year 4. A couple of changes, whatever. But I was doing it because I loved it. And when you love something, it results in mastery and obsession and this fixation on marginal gains. And then you get a really nice outcome, like a chart position. So the first thing is over the long term, if you look at anything I've accomplished, it usually takes 10 years, on average, maybe 5 to 10 years. But I didn't give a fuck about the timeline because I loved it every day. I was surrounded by great people. The first couple of years in anything are a process of personal development and you don't even know you're putting money in the bank.
Yes.
One thing I used to say to my team members at Social Chain was, Social Chain, the business that made me wealthy, was actually a pivot of another company.
Right.
So I did this company called Wallpark for about 3 years and it failed tragically. Then I started Social Chain because that Wallpark taught me something about social media that I saw an opportunity in. And then 5 years into Social Chain, I become incredibly wealthy. And so when I think about, say I made 80 million, right? Say my net worth is 80 million and it took 8 years. I actually made 10 million in year 1 at that failed startup. I made 10 million. I just couldn't cash it out yet. I made 10 million in like development, people skills learning. Year 2, I made another 10 million. Year 3, I made another 10 million, even though I was broke.
Right.
I was living in zone 7 in London. That's not even a zone. It felt like zone 7.
I live in zone 7 right now.
In London.
So.
I couldn't get on the tube. I had no money. And that was like 4 years into business and I still couldn't get on the tube. And then year 4, 5, 6, 7, things went better. And then year 8, I got 18 million, right? I actually made 10 million a year. And like young people, you know, because they are fixated on the bag, not loving every day, they don't want to do it. So like whenever I have an idea for something, whether it's a podcast or this or that, the other, I put it on what I call the someday shelf. Right. Which is this like mental shelf in my mind where all of the ideas that, you know, as a creative entrepreneurial person come up. There's so many of them. One a day, 3 a day. They all go onto the someday shelf. And unless it like nags me and it just keeps jumping off the shelf and I keep putting it back on and I go, I'm busy, I need to focus matters. I don't pursue it. And there's some things in my life, whether it's this podcast, whether it's something else, I go, do you know what? I would just love to do that every day, regardless of time frame or remuneration. Exactly. Then it comes off the Sunday shelf and then I take it really fucking seriously. And when I mean really seriously, I mean, my team know, like I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with every detail. But like we spent hours thinking about every detail, like messing with the candle back there, the music we play when people come in. We usually research what music makes them sad or what music gets them in a certain state and we'll play it. I knew Israel Adesanya, the UFC champion, when he came, I knew that the song Nipsey Hussle Double Up had made him cry 6 years ago so we play that song, the lighting, the feel of this room, the fact you're sat, all of these tiny details. We'll mess around with the thumbnail for your auntie's episode of this podcast. Probably 4 of us around a computer for maybe an hour, 2 hours. And then at 2 a.m. at nighttime, we'll be talking about the title of that episode. And we don't believe in like one big decision is going to get us there. Our thesis, and I say this many times, I don't care if people believe, like I'm willing to tell my competition this is like, if we can find 1% improvement, whether it was 3 of us debating whether that candle should be lit before your auntie arrived, if we can find 1% somewhere, then that over any time frame is going to completely change the trajectory of our product here. And the real driving force, the thing that's going to make us care about if the candle's lit, is that we just love it. So I would love to compete against people who are sweating that the results haven't shown up yet. I remember a year ago we were talking about this podcast and we could predict that we were going to become number 1 even before we were in the top 200 because of our trajectory. So we look at the graphs and we put all of our competitors on this trajectory graph and go, yeah, they have 100,000 followers more than us and in some cases millions. But 2022 in October, we're going to be number 1 because we care about the 1%. And when you zoom out, it's all about trajectory. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about time horizons. Your job as a new podcaster should just be every single day, whoever you're working with, trying to find a 1% marginal gain in the audio, the promotion, whatever you do. You do that and you love it. You'll be unbelievable where you'll be in 5 years. Unbelievable. You'll be number 1. If you really do that, you will be number 1 in 5 years. If you sweat about why you're not there yet and you start to get demoralized, am I shit at podcasting, then you'll never get there.
I asked that question because I think a lot of people don't get why I do it. So I work a 9 to 5. I have now invested into a studio exactly for the things you said. I started my podcast in lockdown. First one was no video, just audio.
Same.
Recording in my garage, like asking people to come to my house, like, hey, do you mind crowding around this £150 mic? Second one was, okay, I need to invest in a camera. Had to learn video editing skills. I was like, this is new. Had to start a YouTube channel. Third one, again, I was like, need to now actually do an intro reel for people, like actually start editing better. Fourth season, I told my parents, I'm going to invest in a studio. And they were like, what? Why? Why are you going to spend money doing this? The editing, as you know, on video, when you have 3 cameras, is totally different on Zoom. The time, the hair, the makeup. I think women have to worry about that a bit more. But the lighting, all of that stuff, organizing the studio, getting people there, organizing, their travel and understanding all of those dynamics. Is it convenient for them or not? It's so much harder. And I wake up at like 2, 3 a.m. sometimes and like voice note myself on my phone because I'm so excited about it. And someone asked me, my friend the other day, and said, are you getting paid for this? And I said, no. And I said, why would you do that? You're like working full time and then you're working on this. And then on the weekends, you don't really come out with us and you leave early. Why are you doing it? And I think I just love it. And I just love how far I've come. I said on my other podcast, I learned how to zoom in the other day. it was like the greatest achievement for me. I learned how to zoom in a frame, and I was like, I never knew how to do that before.
On your other podcast?
I said it on one of my podcasts to someone.
Okay.
Sorry, just the same podcast.
Okay, I was going to say, I was about to, red flag. How many podcasts have you got? Okay,
just one. But I mentioned to them that small win is so stupid. You know, someone would be like, you 100%. Learned how to zoom in on iMovie. Like, grow up. You could have done that ages ago. But it was such a big win for me. And like you said, you just have to love it.
You're making, so say that your podcast, Spotify buy it, you're 2 years in 8 years time, and they buy it for 100 million. You got to think about the fact that you made 10 million this year.
Right.
Like fiddling around and learning how to zoom in.
Right.
In hindsight, this year you made 10 million. If it gets bought in 8 years and your 10th year for 100 million, this year you made 10 million. It didn't feel like it because you're in your garage and you were messing around and fucking up.
Yes.
But that is an unavoidable process of getting to any great position is messing, as your auntie said, like messing around and fucking up. There's no other path. Like young people specifically, because they see people at the finish line, they see a Stephen Bartlett, whatever. They don't see me stealing the pizzas, you know, or doing all the other crafty shit I did when I was, you know, my mum disowning me. They don't get to see that. So my success becomes almost a testament of their own inadequacy because they didn't see the 8 years of pain. And you only got to speak to the first people I hired and they'll tell you just how bad I was, like professionally.
Right.
My ideas were shit. I remember one of my best friends, he's worked for me for about 10 years. He said, Steve's ideas were so shit back then. And it's the greatest gift I can give to a young person that's striving to achieve something is showing you how bad I was. I was way worse than you when I started. So much worse. Like even from a business context, can't do math, can't do English, can't really do anything. But learned a few things because I've always done what I loved, and that is the best like teacher in life, that, you know, stumbling.
Right.
And I stumble because I'm going in a direction that means a lot to me. So stumbling is the only way to get there. And you're stumbling now. I would say to you though, I mean, if you do want to focus on podcasting, the first issue you have to fix in terms of like liberating you from your other responsibilities, your day job, is the commercial one. And all you got to, I know this sounds simple, but all you got to do is get one person to believe in you. And you got to say to one person, listen, think about what they need in their organization. There's some big organizations out there. Give me $20,000 a month. Believe in me. And I'm going to make this the biggest millennial podcast in the world. And when I do, you're gonna be my partner throughout that whole
Stephen.
thing. Yeah.
You set me up for that one, didn't you?
I know that I'm doing it when I do it. I go, in fact, she's going to ask me. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there'll be companies out there that are trying to reach millennials, and you should go to them. I did the same. I did the same with Huel. I called the CEO. I said, I'm starting this podcast. Believe in me. Right. Because that's always been a good bet. And he said, he believed in me more than I believed in myself. He said to me then, your podcast is going to go to number one. And and so when it became big, you know.
It paid off. So I just need a clip from you saying you believe in me so I can send that to all of these companies.
You have it. I believe in you.
We got it.
I believe in her.
So talking about young people.
Yeah.
You're the youngest judge on Dragon's Den. And we often mix competency and credibility with age. I think that's why a lot of people are very hesitant to start a business. Oh, I'm too young. No one's going to take me seriously.
Yeah.
Do you still face that?
You know, so many, like one of my podcast guests taught me a really important lesson about expectations called Mogad. I talk about it all the time because it really did change my life. This idea of like, you know, we're happy in our lives when our expectations of how life should be going are met. And we're unhappy when our expectations of life go unmet. This explains why billionaires, when their steak doesn't come the right amount of cooked, even though they're a billionaire in a wonderful restaurant, they will be like red in the face furious and it's ruined their dinner. Whereas you go to like where I was born in Africa, a bowl of rice equals euphoria because your expectations of life are being exceeded. There's the same thing in like young people and people's expectation of you. When their expectation of you is low, the delta of where you actually deliver becomes impact. Right. So when I was an 18-year-old, I swear to God, I can show you the email after we finish recording. I would say I was younger. When I was 19 years old, I always thought 18 sounded better. So when I emailed investors, I would say, and I can tell because of the timestamps on Gmail, I was 18 when I sent that email saying, I was 19 when I sent that email saying I was 18. Because my belief, and I could see it, was I walk in a room, they go, oh, look at this young kid. I bet he can tie his shoelaces. And then you deliver something in a really articulate, powerful way. They think you're a prodigy. Right. And they would, and my like second round of investors came from me just going on stage in this room in London and being this 18-year-old kid that could speak with, passion, enthusiasm, and had this vision, everyone goes, oh my God, he's going to be a trillionaire, right?
Right.
That expectation is your power. I wish I was younger. I say it to my team every year. I'm like, I get a year older. I'm like, fucking hell, people are less impressed now. You know what I mean? Because I'm like 29 now. Of course you should be a millionaire. Do you know what I mean?
You're 29. Thank God. I thought you were 28.
At least
you're older than me. Hallelujah.
Because I don't change my bios for like 6 months to try and like eke out the last. I probably lied somewhere. But no, like when I get to 30, I'm like, I'm gonna have to be a billionaire to impress people.
Right.
So your youth and the lack of expectation is your power. It's your impact.
That is so
and
powerful.
I'd lean into it.
The last quote in your book really struck a chord with me. Struck a chord with me. You say you'll never be defined, valued or measured by your car, bank balance, job, title, followers, or your accomplishments. Before we spoke, you said you had Mo on and you loved having him on because he didn't have any followers. We still, as a society, inherently value people based on these things.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are on your podcast match one of those criteria. A homeless person on the street probably has so much more to tell us, so many insights to tell us, but yet none of us give them a platform because we inherently think, we know, like you said, we don't need the money, we don't need Lamborghini to be happy. We don't need to value somebody based on the amount of followers they have or their credentials, but yet we keep doing it. How do we stop that?
So the quote really references like, the outside world will value on that basis.
Yes.
Of course, if I go to a restaurant now, they're very nice to me, right? Because I'm on Dragon's Den, so they're very nice to me. Oh, we've got no reservation. Before they didn't have the reservation. Now they make a reservation, right? Of course, the world values like that. But that's actually not the intrinsic value of yourself. And that's it turns out to be the most important thing, like how you feel about yourself at night when you're alone. So of course, the world will do this, circus around you if you are famous, whatever. But what matters, and actually your true value, the thing that will be consequential to your happiness and fulfillment is like how you value yourself. And if you have a Lamborghini, but you still have those kind of unaddressed issues about feeling like you're not enough, you're still going to feel like a piece of shit.
Got it.
We're never going to change the world. Like humans are designed to attribute, as I said, the value of things based on the context they see them. I'm not trying to change the world in the regard of how they attribute the value in something. I will fail. It doesn't matter. It's more about like your perspective of yourself and knowing that if you're not famous, if you're not a millionaire, if you're not whatever, none of those things are going to make you feel like you're enough if you don't already. And actually, the science is pretty clear that when people achieve the goals that they once hoped would make them fulfilled, and it doesn't, they get all kinds of psychological problems. They call it gold medal depression. These Olympians, the UFC fighters. I've had them on my podcast. Johnny Wilkinson, the famous UK rugby player that dropped that goal 17 seconds in the rugby final and got it through the rugby, whatever, the H thing, depressed the next day. Israel Adesanya, the UFC world champion, bullied as a kid, becomes a fighter, wins the UFC title, the greatest potentially fighter at the moment, in therapy the next day with depression because he thought that the belt, the accomplishment, the accolade would make him fulfilled. It would fill some void that his childhood had created. And one day someone said to me, they said, by the way, you're already enough and you don't need anything more. And I remember thinking, what a load of bullshit. I remember being sat there. I remember I was in the tiered seating at Social Chain when this woman said it. She said, you are already, what a load of bullshit. But the truth is, if you don't believe that now, you never will. You'll always defer your happiness to some future accomplishment. And it's like, I refer to it like a ransom taker.
Right.
Like when you pay the ransom to the hostage taker, which is your happiness, they call you. So you've achieved the accomplishment. You've become a millionaire. Your podcast is number one. You get this phone call from the hostage taker, which promised you they would release your happiness. And they say to you, we're going to need double.
Right.
Now you're going to need to crack the US. Right. And that cycle continues as this miserable feeling of like inadequacy for the rest of your life. So the key thing is to know you're enough now, because then that doesn't inhibit your ambition, doesn't mean you're going to lay around in bed. It actually means the things you aim for are real ambitions.
Right.
Not a Lamborghini because my parents didn't have one.
Exactly.
But I want to start Girls Who Code because I want to see real change in the world. And I don't care about, how wealthy it personally makes me, or what people think of me, how many followers that gives me. That's real ambition.
Because that's what I want to do in my heart. And that's what I mentioned before is social media doesn't allow us to do that sometimes. It's very easy to get caught up in what other people want you to do. But actually knowing exactly where you want to go and what is actually like your purpose is important.
Yeah, and you got to blame yourself. So the phraseology is important. It's not social media doing it. It's you doing it.
So true.
You're doing, even with your parents, like your parents can't make you stay in that job.
Yeah.
You're choosing to stay in that job.
Yeah.
Because of something within you that you need to have a conversation with.
People pleaser.
Yeah,
So many things.
Yeah.
So
Can end up pleasing everyone but yourself.
Exactly. I am so honoured to have spoken to you today.
No worries.
But I have one question. My last question. Why did you say yes to this?
I just respect. You know, your auntie actually mentioned it. There's sometimes, maybe that's why she said it.
Did you say it because of that?
No. But she made a really good point, which was probably the most valuable podcast I can go on in terms of like helping someone then leverage me for other guests is ones like this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're going to go back to the UK.
I am.
And, you know, you can say to people, Steve Bartlett came on the podcast. And there's a group of people that will then say yes because of that. And I also can tell from the pre-conversation we had that this is actually what you want to do. This is not some game or some like little thing that's going to last you a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, just the conviction to ask, I respect it. And like there's so many, you know, I think that's really important for people to hear. Because as I said at the start of this conversation, the consequence of me saying no returns you to the exact life you had before. Absolutely. But the upside of someone saying, maybe with a little ego dent, but
not really though.
If I'd gone, no, what are you talking about? And I'd stormed off, which happens, it happens. But the relative like upside of someone saying yes to just asking a question, no harm and potentially pivotal. So well done to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
No worries.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for allowing me to record here.
Thank you. And thank you for telling your auntie to come and do this because she's amazing.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening or watching, if you could press the like, follow and subscribe button, it would mean the world to me.